It was early December 1979. In Pforzheim, Germany, winter was still hesitant. The streets glistened wet from the rain, and the lights of the vocational school reflected in the puddles as Manfred and Ernst threw their tool bags into the trunk after the last class. Manfred, 21 years old, an electronics apprentice in his third year, owned what people back then called a real car, a 1967 Fiat 500. It was small, round, and had a red stripe running all around it that once shone brightly. Now the paint was dull, and rust bloomed like brown moss around the wheel arches. But the engine still purred bravely, and the little car had character. Meggie, Manfred called her affectionately, even though she looked more like a rusty beetle. Ernst was 2 years younger, also an electronics apprentice, but cut from completely different wood. He came from the deep black forest, from the area around Bayersbronn. He knew every back road, every hidden valley, and every story the villages told. When they were out in the evenings, Ernst usually sat in the passenger seat, directing with his hand. Turn left, up there by the old sawmill. No, not the main road, the small one. On this Friday, they had no concrete plans, just the desire to get out. The vocational school was behind them. The week had been long. Just drive south, Ernst said with a grin. I'll show you where I come from. They started at 4:30. It was already pitch dark. The Fiat's headlights cut 2 yellow cones into the night. On the B463 towards Freudenstadt, there was still little traffic. Ernst turned on the radio, some disco song, but Manfred quickly turned it down. Let's talk, he said. Tell me about Kloster Reichenbach. And Ernst told stories about the old monastery church that had stood there since the Middle Ages, about the monks who once grew wine and herbs, about his childhood when he roamed the valleys on his bicycle. Manfred listened while the Fiat bravely tackled the climbs. The heater blew lukewarm air, and it smelled of old oil and damp carpet. The further they drove into the Black Forest, the colder it became. Near Bayersbronn, the world suddenly changed. The first flakes danced in the headlights. Then came snow. Not just a little, a solid white blanket covered the road. The Fiat's wheels spun briefly, but quickly found grip again. The little car swayed cheerfully through the curves, as if snow was exactly what it was built for. See, Manfred laughed, Meggie isn't afraid of the Black Forest. They drove through Kloster Reichenbach. The houses lay quiet under a thick layer of snow, the roofs powdered white. The streetlights cast warm orange circles on the ground. Somewhere in a backyard, not far from the old monastery church, they saw light in a low building. A hand-painted sign pointed to a youth center. Let's check it out, Ernst said. Maybe something's happening. Manfred parked the Fiat carefully in the yard. The snow crunched under the tires. They got out, pulled their jackets tighter, and walked to the door. Inside, it was warm, bright, and loud. 5 or 6 young women, really girls, 16 or 17 years old, sat on old sofas and chairs. They turned around when the door opened, and their faces lit up. Hello, come in, called one with long dark hair and a thick knitted cardigan. You're not from around here, are you? Manfred and Ernst introduced themselves. The girls' names, well, they have faded over the decades like old photographs. There was the one with freckles and a laugh that filled the whole room. The quiet one with glasses who always looked a bit thoughtful. The one with braids who immediately offered tea. And the one standing by the record player, carefully putting the needle back to the beginning of the long playing record. In the background, music was playing, Boney M, Christmas songs. Mary's Boy Child played first, then When a Child is Born and Rivers of Babylon. Liz Mitchell's and Bobby Farrell's voices filled the room with a mix of disco rhythm and deep, almost reverent warmth. When the song ended, someone put the needle back to the start. It was as if no one wanted the mood to break. They sat down with them. Someone pulled up 2 chairs. There was hot tea with lemon and cookies from a tin box. The girls were curious. "What do you do in Pforzheim? Electronics? That sounds exciting. Can you really repair radios?" Manfred talked about vocational school, about circuit diagrams, soldering tin, and cold solder joints to avoid. Ernst spoke about the forests here, about hidden streams, and how the snow made everything quiet. The conversation flowed easily. They laughed a lot. At some point, the talk turned to deeper things. About God, about Christmas, which meant more than just gifts and lights, something greater. "You know," the quiet girl with glasses said softly, "when I hear Mary's boy child, I always think, the child in the manger. That was the beginning of everything. Not just a celebration, but a salvation." Bobby Farrell's deep, expressive voice sang in the background. Mary's boy child, Jesus Christ, was born on Christmas Day. The girls hummed along. Manfred felt something in his chest that he couldn't quite describe later. It was warm. It was right. The rusty Fiat outside, the snow, the unfamiliar faces that suddenly weren't unfamiliar anymore. Everything fit together. They talked about life after school, about dreams, about faith and doubt. The clock kept ticking, but no one looked at it. The Boney M record spun again and again. Little Drummer Boy came on. Hark the Herald Angels Sing, in that special groovy version. The girls' voices sometimes blended with the band's. Around 11 o'clock at night, they realized it was time to go. The snow outside lay even higher. The girls walked them to the door. Hugs. "Come back sometime. Drive carefully." Manfred and Ernst got into the Fiat. The engine started right away. The heater bravely fought the cold. On the way back, they spoke little. Only the hum of the engine and the soft crunch of the tires in the snow. Ernst looked out the window into the white darkness. "That was a good evening," he said finally. "Yes," Manfred answered. "A truly blessed evening." 30 years later, sometime in the 2000s, Manfred sat alone in his living room. Christmas was approaching. The usual songs played on the radio. Suddenly, a familiar melody sounded. "By the Rivers of Babylon." Liz Mitchell's voice, so expressive, so full of that old, deep faith. Manfred paused. The memory returned like a warm breeze. The white Fiat with the red stripe. The snow in Kloster Reichenbach. The girls in the youth center. The laughter. The conversations about God. The Boney M record that kept starting over. He searched the internet for the song, found the old recordings, and suddenly he remembered again. That was Boney M, the lead singer with her powerful voice, and Bobby Farrell with his deep, soulful voice. They had made these old Christmas songs so alive that they lasted for decades. He smiled into the silence of his room. The girls' names had long faded, but the feeling remained. That one time, on a cold December evening in 1979, when two young men from Pforzheim were simply on the road, and in a backyard in Germany's Black Forest, they found something bigger than coincidence. Sometimes, when he hears the songs today, he closes his eyes and sees the red stripe of the Fiat shining in the snow. And he thinks, some evenings are blessed. Even if you forget their names, the light remains. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching this story with me until the end. In a world that often feels cold and noisy, stories like this, profound, heartfelt, and full of faith, are so important. If you'd like more of these, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new one. Let me know in the comments how this story touched you. I really read every single comment. May God bless you with a wonderful day. See you soon.